Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing this watercolor floral card featuring new products from Trinity Stamps that release, if you're watching this on the day I post it, tomorrow. It's the Crafty Hugs release. I'm so excited about what's included in this release and saw this flower set and just thought, I gotta watercolor that. So I can't show you the whole stamp set because of course it's sneak peek week, but I have got it heat embossed and I have my Daniel Smith watercolor palette. If you want to see a video on this palette, let me know. I've got this floral image heat embossed and the sentiment with Hero Arts Platinum embossing powder. As always, all of the products that I'm using are linked down below. I am just going through and doing some watercoloring. I've said this now a couple times. I am not an expert watercolor, but it is a New Year's resolution of mine, my crafty resolution, to get better at watercoloring because I think that the images that people watercolor are just so incredibly beautiful. And I want to be able to create those as well on my cards. And I think, people always appreciate the cards that took a little bit longer. And obviously, watercoloring takes quite a bit longer. All said, it took me about 45 minutes to watercolor this image and watercolor the background, which you will see here in a little bit. So I am just going through and trying to color all of my colored things at the same time. So there's a couple different kinds of leaves, but these bigger leaves I'm coloring in this green, and then some of the other leaves will be colored in a different shade of green. And I'm just adding a little bit of color to the base of the leaf and then up the stem a little bit and dragging out the color with water. Like I said, nothing fancy, but I think the end result ends up being really nice. By the way, I should also mention that all of the brushes that I'm using are linked down below, and the paper that I'm using is also linked down below. The brushes are all either velvet brushes or Zen brushes, and the paper that I'm using is Arches Cold Press, which is my most favorite watercolor paper. And I really only use it for special cards because it is so expensive to use. But I do feel like it produces a much better result. Sometimes off camera, I'm doing a little bit of mixing on the right. This palette that I have, which is the Bulletproof palette from Magello, is the one Christina Warner uses. So I thought I'd take that recommendation and order it too. It has a lot of space for mixing colors, which I really, really like. I do feel like my next kind of crafty watercolor challenge needs to be no line watercoloring. I find that really intimidating, but I think it would be really fun to do. And I love, love, love people's cards when I see them and they are no line watercolored. People do really fun ones with flowers, but I also see really fun ones where they do critters. So I feel like there's so many things you can do with watercolors, with techniques, with the things that we already have. As you can see, I'm using that other green color now, adding in a little bit of interest. I feel like on floral arrangements, you always see greenery that is multiple shades. I think it adds a lot of dimension. So I'm just making sure that I'm using a couple different colors. Now I am moving on to painting in the flowers. So I knew that I wanted to go like pinks, purples, those types of shades, reds. So this is quinacridone rose. I think I'm saying that word right. And just going through and adding in a little bit of color and dragging it out more with water. All of these little flowers, technically they're not all the same kind of flowers, but because they were all so small, I thought I could get away with coloring them all the same color. I do feel like that's kind of a time saver for some of these, is how, you know, watercoloring takes so long, but how can I do it in a way that makes the most sense? So let's color all of the things that are the same color at the same time. I feel like that really helps. And then let's try to group things together. So the little flowers, let's group them all and go from there. Now on these big flowers, my watercoloring approach is to add a little bit of color at the base of the petal and then drag it up. And then anywhere where there would be overlapping petals, there would be a shadow. I do go back and add a little bit more of the concentrated color because I just don't think that there's enough color. Also, while I'm coloring this, I forget to add color to the center of the flowers. And then, I ended the video, came back later and went to go take photos once everything was dry and realized that I had never added color. So you can see in the photos at the end that I added just a little bit of yellow to the center of those flowers. So I am just finishing up these flowers. I've got the purple flower, the red flower, and then on the third flower, I mixed together multiple shades. Basically, it's the purple and the pink mixed together. Kind of makes a fuchsia tone. So I am just going through, like I said, painting these ones up. And then once this is done, I am going to leave it to the side to dry and move on to the background. So for the background, I knew that I wanted a kind of navy-ish blue tone. So what I'm doing is just painting a mixture of like a gray and a darker blue shade. And I'm just painting layers and layers and layers of this. So this is the first layer. I set it aside to dry. And then I went and painted the second layer. I will say I got really impatient letting it air dry. And in the end, between layers, I did end up using my heat tool. What you are seeing now is probably the fourth or fifth layer. It was a lot of layers to get it to this color. I could have just used colored cardstock, and looking back, maybe I probably should have done that and would probably do that next time just to make this a little bit easier. I then take my dried panel and splatter some white watercolor on top, kind of using my hand to deflect the splatter from going everywhere, even though it goes everywhere. I need one of those splatter boxes. And then also using in my Daniel Smith watercolor palette, I have a pearlescent shimmer color. So using that to make some splatters as well, just adding some interest to the background of this card. You could also have used gold splatter or silver splatter. Even acrylic paint works. Acrylic paint actually makes a darker impact because it's a little bit thicker and you're not watering it down. So there's that pearlescent shimmer. And then I will set this aside to dry. I don't heat dry it, but I just set it aside to dry. So now we move on to card assembly and we're almost done. So I've got my cutout. I use the coordinating die cut to cut out this big floral image and a coordinating die cut to cut out the sentiment, which just says love you bunches, which I think is really cute because it's a bunch of flowers. So I'm just putting this down on my card, how I think I am going to lay it out. And then what I will end up doing is popping up that bunch of flowers with foam tape. So just adding foam tape to the back of this to cover everything. And then I will peel off the tape and add this to my card front. This adds a little bit of dimension and interest, makes the floral cluster really stand out. Just making sure I get that positioned exactly where I want it. And then I've got that little love you bunches. I could have popped this up, but I wanted the flowers to be the focal point and for the sentiment to kind of sit in the background. So I'm just using some liquid glue to add to the back of this and then attach it to the front. And then my card is complete. I hope that you enjoyed seeing a sneak peek at this Love You Bunches stamp set. This release is available on January 24th over at Trinity Stamps and at the other online resellers that sell Trinity stamps. I hope that you'd enjoyed watching this video, and I will catch you in the next one. Thank you so much.